Ghost of Yotei is finally here, but before you begin Atsu's hunt, there are numerous settings you should consider changing. Thank you PlayStation for gifting the game early and making this video possible. Anyway, setting number 1 is under the display section and is to change graphics modes. If you're using a standard PS5 system, I strongly recommend switching to the performance mode. Here, you still get to enjoy fantastic visuals, albeit at a silky smooth 60fps instead of a default 30. For you lucky PS5 Pro players though, the exclusive Ray Tracing Pro mode is the clear winner. Here, you'll get Ray Trace global illumination for better lighting, and PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution ensure the image looks as sharp as possible, sometimes even sharper than native 4K. This is all whilst the game runs at 60fps too, so it's the easy choice. Now, assuming you have switched to one of the 60fps modes, the second setting to change is motion blur, which you'll want to turn off to reduce smear and make the image even crisper. Moving on, setting number 3 is under accessibility and is to change campfire controls from simplified to microphone. This means that instead of pulling the trigger to blow air into campfires, you literally do it through the controller, Astrobot style. Sure, it is a little gimmicky, but I think it adds to the immersion and I wanted to point it out. The fourth setting is at the bottom of this menu and is to consider changing the off-screen detection indicator. By default, when an enemy detects you, that area of the screen flashes white, orange or red depending on their level of awareness. Don't get me wrong, this is definitely a useful assist, but I do think the gameplay becomes more enjoyable and immersive with it either fully turned off or switch to the minimal option for a less intrusive effect. Now, moving to the controls menu, setting number 5 is to enable motion sensor function aim. This enables gyroscopic aiming for all ranged weapons, so you're able to make those finer adjustments by physically moving the DualSense. It gives you the accuracy of a mouse whilst maintaining the comfort of a controller. This isn't for everyone and is difficult to get used to, but trust me, it's really cool once you do adapt to it, so at the very least, give it a try. On a similar note, the sixth setting is highly dependent on how you personally prefer to play, but is to consider changing the controller layout scheme to melee alternate. Essentially, this means you use R1 and R2 for attacks rather than square and triangle. Personally, I do prefer the default layout, but loads of you specifically asked about this on my review, so I wanted to confirm that the option is present. Also, I'm curious as to what the general split is on this, so let me know which layout you prefer in the comments. Oh, and please subscribe whilst you're at it. Anyway, going back to the display section, setting number 7 is the option to show Atsu's mask in cutscenes. By default, this is turned off, so regardless of your customization, Atsu will always appear without a mask in cutscenes. For some of us, this could break immersion as you'd expect your cosmetic changes to be retained, so if that's something that would bother you, turn this on. Keeping it off does ensure you get to fully appreciate the acting behind the character though, so ultimately it is down to personal preference. Similarly, settings 8 and 9 are both preference based and are the Mike and Watanabe modes. The Mike mode adds more mud, more blood, and uses a tighter cinematic camera during gameplay. I actually do really like this mode. It makes combat feel both more intense and rewarding, however I have found the extra mud to be a bit excessive, so ultimately I did spend most of my playthrough with it off, but again you might really like this, so I encourage you to give it a go. The Watanabe mode plays original lo-fi music whilst exploring and in combat, and honestly I really like having this on for when I'm powering through the side content. If you're focused on the story though, I'd probably keep it off, but again this is ultimately up to you, so give it a try and see if you like it or not. Next up is setting number 10 and it's to change your HUD style to expert once you feel comfortable with the controls and combat. This minimizes the UI by hiding elements that aren't needed in the current situation, making the game even more immersive. It also forces you to read enemies' stagger status based on their actual appearance rather than the bar. Honestly, I find this makes the gameplay much more engaging, especially if you pair it with the Mike mode. But this isn't a change I'd make immediately, so play the game for a few hours first. Moving on, HDR is incredibly impressive in Ghost of Yotei, but I'm willing to bet that your PS5's HDR settings are wrong for your setup, so watch your video on screen now to see exactly how to configure it for the best results from your display. Also, please consider liking and subscribing if you found any of these settings useful. I'd really appreciate it.